afternoon again. Hi, everyone. Hello, hello. Hi, good afternoon. Hello again, everyone. Thanks for continuing to be with us on day 2 of the 2023 NGC Bocas Lit Fest. The room is full of Bocas energy, and it is lovely to witness and to feel. As you all know, poetry travels a long distance across our diasporas and our Caribbean to be here with us. We're really excited to have these two poets in conversation from Jamaica by way of Leeds, and also from Dominica. Jason Allen-Paisant and Celia Sorhaindo are two of the most insightful and incisive poets working in our English today. And I'm really excited to see and hear what they speak about with their host, Renée from Furious Flower Poetry Center. Please give them a huge round of applause.
Oh, yes, okay, all right. I just need to speak into the mic. Hey, y'all, how y'all doing? Good, good. Thank you for hanging with us on this beautiful, beautiful day. I have the great pleasure to introduce the panelists here today. They probably don't need much by way of introduction, but we will start. Celia Sorhaindo was born in the Commonwealth of Dominica. She migrated with her family to England in 1976 when she was 8 years old, returning home in 2005. Her poems have been published in Verse Daily, Illuminations International Magazine, Rattle, Wasafari, Anomaly, among many others, and the Caribbean journals thank you for turning me up, The Caribbean Writer, BIM, Mocha Magazine, and others. She is a co-compiler of Home Again, Stories of Migration and Return, and her first poetry trap book was longlisted for the 2021 OCM Bocas Prize for Caribbean Literature and was published in 2020. And we also have this beautiful, beautiful book, which I encourage you all to get after our session, Radical Normalisation. And she's also a wonderful fellow of Cropper Foundation Creative Writers Workshop and Callaloo. And also, we have Jamaican-based poet Jason Allen-Paisant. We will be sharing, he'll be sharing some of his work as a Jamaican-based poet and academic who works as a senior lecturer in critical theory and creative writing at the University of Manchester in the UK, based in the UK, I should say, born and raised in Jamaica. He's the author of 2 poetry collections, Thinking with Trees, winner of the 2022 OCM Bocas Prize for Poetry, and Self-Portrait as Othello. His nonfiction book is going to be forthcoming in 2024, entitled Scanning the Bush, and he lives in Leeds with his wife and 2 children. So I hope that you all check out these beautiful books after our session today. So we're going to kick things off with a reading from Jason to begin. And then Celia will come in with reading a poem. We'll have some conversation, some poetry interspersed, and some time for questions. Oh, I should say who I am, maybe, huh? I'm Renée. I'm the Assistant Director of the Furious Flower Poetry Center, which is the nation's first academic center for Black poetry, based at James Madison University in Virginia. I have the great honor of working alongside Executive Director Lauren K. Allain, a Trinidadian-based poet and writer. She sends her love to everyone here. And wants me to plug one of the main roles as her role as executive director is really to globalize that word Black what that means in a place that's the nation's first academic center for Black poetry. So we've been able to bring in Caribbean writers like Shar McCollum and Mervyn Taylor and Malika Booker to the center this year. And we hope to see you all in 2024 in September, where we'll have our first Fury's Flower Poetry Conference that we have every decade. So once in a 10-year opportunity to see what Black poets across the diaspora are producing. So mark your calendars, September 18th through 21st, 2024. We hope that you all will join us. Okay, we're gonna start with Jason.
Told I can move this. Ooh, I'm sorry. I didn't know it was so heavy. Yeah. People, it's so good to be, it's great to see you. It's really great to see you, and yeah, much love to you. Smile of leeches, perfect circle of pain. A woman's lips, the eagerness in her eyes, we descend stairs of stone. The woman I had kissed in the middle of the street is here on the ground in the club, glory and praise. The woman I had kissed in the north is here in the south, and yes, I'm going back to seek her, a shard in my palm. Douleur, the oozing, oohing of the ooh, and the ah of the grinding. The sound of pain is a winding, whining, douleur, do. Dance with me is a wine in my mouth, is a sexiness of the words, is a land of sin, of pain. The neon lights, the thirst of skin on skin, smell of hunger, violon dingue, sounds in the night sea, going down underneath stones, coming back up in shore, but down in the locked deep. These stones be watching me. My jumper's too ugly. My locks don't fit. The shame fly won't quit. My head don't stand right, not suave, smooth, small. My sebaceous glands ooze monsters. My head don't fit. I don't fit right inside it. And what about my arms? I can't control the way they bend. Cannot find home for my body, inside porous, inside Paris, inside the skin of my small house of mummy, of missiles, of mopsticks flying. I've drowned my pain tonight like yesterday, like so many other nights, from bar to bar, from hole to hole, from drink to drink. I've drowned my pain crying, Daddy, Daddy, when, Daddy? I pull myself through tight spaces, through the twists and turns of the Marais' dim alleyways. The locks won't do, but I insist. I sleep the days away. No one can see me, ghost actor. Will it be worth it? Will it be worth it? My woman has left me, no ground left under me. My granny now lies in the earth. September spiraled into October, October into a circle of shadows. Show me the hidden side of the script. The question of the futile terrorizes me. There are many sighs. Bodies, mainly mine, I see now rushing around on the edge of Acheron, hurrying to one side, then fleeing in opposite direction. Show me the hidden side of the script. I want the kind of life that can be read, not piddling, paltry, mooching along instead. Why do I always have to be translated, never well represented. I need to find a place to be spectacular. In this place, I am too many things, and life is easier when you singular. At nights in the café, École Normale Supérieure. Hair dancing over faces like flames. Come to me, the Wolauno. Come, let me fill you with my desire. I am hungry for talk. I am a stranger. We smile fake, scream fake, dance fake. The body is eager. The body is white. Marble statues in my storybook, white body of my learning. Yes, come now, you and I, be my Desdemona on stage in the café. Let us dance all night under the light. Your hair of snakes will worm and knot us together. No light, no air. The music is my body on yours. September spiraled into October, October into a circle of shadows. Look down on this child. Even in my dream, me I beg, Daddy, Daddy, when, Daddy? Absence and loss meeting at the middle finger to you. In Prague, me voici dans la foule, accepting big invitations, Odéon, Salle Pleyel, the plush-carpeted Comédie Française, a place in the upper stalls, le speakeasy on Champs-Élysées, €40 for an entree. Aspirationniste, assume. You must feel it in the speakeasy. Duo of foie gras and half-cooked tuna, live jazz drinking up Veuve Clicquot, saxophone and piano riffing miles into space. You must feel it, this acting. Then when they carry the bill, she pays cash. 2,000 odd, blouse and skirt, cash money flashing upon the table. Our daughter Chris like money, my body weak. You must feel like you could, but Daddy is a civil engineer, my ass. You've got to be what you loathe, what you scorn. A box boat, harborless, says Brathwaite. Nice word, harborless spade. Bastard picnic. Embrace each away a different father story. Embrace no dad. Absence and loss in the middle. Throw away the damn tweed. Put on your gold chain and rock that pendant with the studs. The hefty cross. Step out in your donkey swag. Them girls rush you in the club and outside the violon dank from 12 to 5 in the morning. In Prague, a hot summer's day on the Charles Bridge. The river's demented blades of sunlight, a yellowness compelling me to jump. I split the air like a horse's stride. The moist legs of the morning emerge like islands on the surface of the sea. My desire beats like a thoroughbred. We hunted carnal pleasure, my friend and I agreed. It was a game of healing and transgression. Myself was lurking, ready to step out of the shade. I was the ultimate in black. My body swelled up till Kaya hair, thick lips and African nose filled the universe as the waters came into me. Myself emerged from Prague's river. Then the night swayed its hips into the heaven of a dance hall. Like towers, my desires rose. Get up, I heard them speak, rising into the darkness. as the enigma of a woman passed my way. Her thighs mantled in coital light, she danced. I could feel within my chest her surprised command. It was Obia possessing her soul. The rest of the night, I was the ancient king laughing over the city. I was gable and arch. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Jason. Wonderful. And we'll have a poem from Celia.
Focus, hi. And any Dominicans who are in the house or listening, just big up, because small island, but powerful, potent, alchemical island. So big up to Dominica. I'm just going to read a poem from my first collection. I was speaking to Monique about the pronunciation, but I just will say my Taino people, I'm sure they'll forgive me if I pronounce the word incorrectly. So Dominica suffered a Category 5 hurricane in 2017, and this collection came out of the really complicated mix of emotions of that time. So as the session is about personas, this poem is called Invoked, and the speaker is Hurricane Maria. Santa Maria, human, you named me, teased me out from the labyrinth of your Dionysus dreams. I am your mother of a hurricane. So look now intimately into the white cosmic chaos of my cyclops eye. Listen intently to the thundering doom of my clack, clack, cloven hooves. In the folds of my fleeting calm, you will hear me blow up the silence with maddening whispers, whispers, whispers. You will try to make light of my dark, drink, laugh out loud, try to throw me out of your basement. I will flood you up the streaming stairs, silent, sober. Try to close your heavy shutters and doors against my whipping, my wailing. I will split them like coconuts. Try to protect your children, swaddle them in the crook of your fleshy arm. You will stifle them all the way to rigor mortis. Smirk. Pat your broad back for your safe home. I will trap you for days inside your mausoleum, force you to loathe loved ones, unburied bodies on your bloody marble kitchen table. Cling onto the door of your ensuite bathroom, concrete sealed. In 2 ferocious shakes, you will shiver, stare into a void unhinged. Try to seek shelter, a firm piece of ground to anchor yourself. I will chew off each of your 7 covered chapters, spittle them out, ribs of flamboyant trees, and bury you nude in red, brown, putrid mud. Your rapacious black and white cat will saber-tooth your tongue down to a stump, claw out and play with your tonsils. Your gold-chained pit bull will suck all grey gloom night on your red, rich, raw-boned marrow. When I leave, for all I know, for all I care, you will seek to solve my riddle in rubble, ask why. My mayhem will be a lunatic's mystery, pressure popping, hurricane-tiled roofs, blood fluttering over nailed tin on shack, crushed crystal caressing calabash. My wings are not of doves, but black as barb. My feathers not light, but dense as tar, talons diabolical. There will be no olive green foliage left to hide behind peace of mind. I will turn you loose. I will tornado you out of your right mind. I will leave you with nothing worth saving. Thy will be done. Thank you. And I just want to really thank Shivani because all the Caribbean magazines are where my poems first found home. So Mocha magazine was one of the first places that accepted one of my poems, and Shivani was the guest editor of Susumba Book Bag, where that poem first appeared. So it's really thanks to them that I am here. And I really want to just say, Dr. Orwin Bully, who was our cultural icon, and he created the Nature Island Literary Festival, and he recently passed, so I just want to remember his name, because without the Literary Festival, I would not be here on this stage either, so just thank you.
Thank you so much. That was tremendous. That's tremendous. I hope you all can hear kind of the range of voices that are in these poems. There's so many ways in which you all incorporate chorus of voices. Jason, for your latest book, situating it in the framework of Othello, right? And your speaker in conversation with this character we have from literature, but set in a kind of contemporary context of what does it mean to be a Black body in a space that doesn't look like everyone else, right? And then Celia, I was so intrigued in your latest work, how you incorporate this chorus of voices either as epigraphs to start the work, such as with Derek Walcott, or even situating your text above text that follows with this kind of line that feels like it's resting upon the shoulders of these giants, as we see with writers such as Gabriel Ramirez, yes, and Julius S. Lewis. So I wondered if you all could talk a little bit about how you decided to situate yourself in this kind of framework in conversation with other voices, and what that offered in terms of your creative process. In my head, I just kept feeling a call and response that just continued throughout the whole text. It was woven together so masterfully. So I wondered if you could talk a little more about that.
Yeah. You want to start?
I'll go. So I was just speaking to Elle actually about, I don't know if anyone has seen the film Everything Everywhere All at Once. Like my brain is like that. So like poetry for me is like I'm a computer programmer originally, so I came to poetry quite late. And when I discovered it, or poetry discovered me, it was really the complications of Hurricane Maria, and I found this way I could spill everything on the page in the most distilled way, but that contained everything I wanted to. All the paradox could be contained in this form. And so going back to your point is, it's not only literary figures that are in the collection, it's like everything that has informed my life, every person I've met, every article I've read. I love quantum entanglement, I love AI, I'm a real nerd. So, computer programming. And I call myself a page poet because I try to utilize every single thing on the page. So a comma is never just a comma. A punctuation mark is never just a punctuation mark. I am very particular about M dashes and N dashes and hyphens, so don't mess with my M dashes, please. You've changed, and don't mess with my capitalization. If you title my poem with all capitals, you've made a new poem, basically. So I feel very passionate about that. So I really want to mention, because you mentioned Derek Walcott, and you will notice in that poem is my sister, my twin sister. So, like, she originally was at the top, but that got moved to put Derek Walcott before, and I would say my sister came first because she was my first entry into poetry. So if I could have referenced like 100 people on each of my poems, but I couldn't. So that's how I talk into everything.
Yeah, so for me, it's about, as you heard in some of the poetry, for instance, I referenced Brathwaite, in a kind of direct citation, actually. So there's one of the influences that have really helped shape my poetic, and even in this sort of oral, this sort of kind of flow that I've brought into the first, brought into the book. And there are other people that I kind of pull through the book in terms of people who are just present at the shaping of the thinking and the poetic. There's Dion Brandt, which is, sort of cited, referenced in several points throughout the collection. There is Léon Damas, the French Guyanese poet. There's Aimé Césaire. And there are other figures. Obviously, there's Shakespeare, because, somehow at some point, we could talk about that because it's kind of a long story, but at some point, I realized that I wanted to respond to this Shakespeare play. And in particular, the character, the figure of Othello was an interesting stepping off point to think about, black embodiment, kind of black masculinity as well, or masculinities. And it's, responding to that play. But obviously I'm not, it's sort of, how would I put this? I situate myself within it, It's kind of like an ekphrastic response where my story as well is refracted through that prism. So there's all sorts of echoes and choruses, as you say, including the chorus of my Shakespeare teacher. When I went to Venice and stood upon the Rialto Bridge for the first time, first person I think of is Cordella Forbes, who is my Shakespeare teacher at the University of the West Indies, just because of that connection, and just because. So it's interesting how place is really interesting when it comes into our colonial and colonial influenced education, how we kind of inhabit these colonial places, these imperial places, even before we've gone there. So yeah, I guess that's part of the dancing around, the kind of, it's like a dancing, it really is a kind of dancing, the way our voices are shaped when you think about migration and travel and movement. It's a gathering. So I think chorus actually is an appropriate metaphor to think about that.
Yeah, I love how you say place and shaping of the voices, because in addition to thinking about who you may be in conversation with, it struck me how you all were also approaching language, right? Language from different dialects, language across, the French, which my mouth cannot hold. I was like, trying to take notes there. But how you're thinking about language as also a place of accessibility and also a place of alienation, right? And also how you both hold silence, how silence can also speak its own kind of language with your speakers in these places. So I wondered if you might talk a little bit about your approach to language, how language can hold and sometimes keep out with the speakers in both of your works.
Yeah, I'll probably start and then you can amplify, take it to another level. Yeah, I think I probably couldn't have said it better than how you summed it up there in terms of, language being, I love that formulation, accessibility and alienation at the same time. And isn't that the Caribbean experience, Isn't that literally how we inhabit language? I really connect with that. More particularly, I guess, in my case, but not particularly, because loads of people have, I could look to any number of figures who have embraced this moving along and moving through language. For me, multiplicity, multilingualism, it is more than a theoretical posturing. It really is it really was a saving for me. And I'm not even being metaphorical. It really was a place of refuge, a place of kind of where I was born to myself in a different way through, going through certain traumas as a young child, and like the memoir bit of the book kind of shows up that as well, but also in a larger societal framework in Jamaica where to be poor and black in Jamaica is its own reality in terms of the pain, in terms of the kind of exclusions and the kind of shame and shaming that your body kind of undergoes, but also just for me, just a personal, the collection is also the absence of the dad, that empty place of the father in the book, real thing, that a lot of Jamaican society, anybody from Jamaican society can realize the social dynamics of that, and the kind of real, sometimes silent pains that come with that. And language was the sort of a place of escape. It was a way of flying away from my body. And I've forgotten your question, but I think I'm answering it somehow. But yeah. Let me just pass it over to you. Yeah.
Language is such an interesting thing because, again, I'm thinking of the programming metaphor. I always see the parallels between computer programming and real life. So it's so funny how AI is in the space, because it's like we're trying to create something with AI that we've already got. Like if you think of operating system, we all have our operating systems. If you think about code, language code, we all have our language code. If you think of cloud storage, we have cloud storage, I believe, in a collective consciousness. So every computer term you can think of, if you think of memory, computer memory, so every computer term, I can see a real life analogy. So carry on, everybody, with your AI, that's fine. So going back to the question, I think about what we've lost as African continent people and the languages we've lost. And I honestly believe English is a trickster language. It's a complete trickster language. The words never mean what they originally meant. They sound the same, have different meanings. So what I love to do with language, and we underestimate the power of play. I love to play with language. And sometimes in poetry, it seemed like that is really like a childish thing, or it's not taken seriously. And I honestly believe there is nothing more serious than play. And play is the most powerful tool we have. So I think I took a lot of risk in the collection that I didn't know were risk at the time. I just wrote what I wanted to write. It's only now I'm realizing that they could be risk in the sense that I don't think it's a coincidence that there's a spell in spelling. I honestly don't. It's there for a reason. I don't think it's a coincidence that the letter I is the same as our eyes. That's there for a reason. So I took risk with spelling. I think people could have thought, oh, she can't spell, especially coming from our history. I took risks with puns. People think that puns aren't a serious thing in poetry, and I'm so glad that Tishani Doshi, she mentioned the power of pun, and like now I can say Tishani says puns, so I can have that as well. So I really try to play with language in my poetry as much as possible.
Yeah, I love the poem. I'm going to mispronounce this. Haruspication? Yes, that poem, the wordplay there and the consonants and the way that, as you said, words can have different meanings and double meanings was beautiful. I think this might be a good segue for you to read maybe a poem that you feel like could exemplify some of that wordplay that you have. I think I always, when I was reading your work, I tell my students, I think about the mouthfeel of language, the crunchiness, the sumptuous, the umptuousness of the vowels and the consonants, and that's so evident in your work. So I wondered if you might share something with us.
If John Robert Lee's listening, he knows I have a whole PhD essay on why I hate reading poetry. And one of the reasons is that by sounding out the poem, I'm forcing it into one reality, and there's so many realities when each of you will read it, and I keep being forced to collapse the poem into one reality and my voice, and I hate my poems being tied to my voice and to me, because they're now your poems. I'm done with them. So it's like they're for you to find yourself in them, not for me to find myself in them anymore. So this one's called I Am Not Amused, and obviously it's a play on amuse and who is the muse and where does the muse comes from. Listen. I am so frickin' mad. This bloody poem just barged its way into my body, did not ask me first if I wanted to play host, did not ask me if it could use the material matter of my life experience to make its bed and lie down its message on this clean white page, bring its wildly repurposed words to solo pen paper party. It makes already hot blood boil over. Jesus, who do these poems think they are? God Almighty ancestors? They are not even familiar family. They just passive-aggressive, their thick muscle selves all over the universe. Sparks spread and fire up their perversive viral verses everywhere. Frickin' narcissistic gaslighters. Some of them don't even know yet what it is they want to say, clearly, have not taken some quiet time out to think their feelings through, solitude and reflect, before crash coursing into my plane of reality. Then they blame me for being born half-formed, ask me to clear things up, make them whole, or abort their ugly massed mess, like it is something I was double-bound, born to do. But I have never killed off an imperfect poem yet. I'm leaving this frickin' mad one right here. You deal with it. You make sense out of it. Question, why is it here now?
I love that voice and that humor too, and exclamation marks. I see you're a fan of exclamation marks. I picked that up. And so I wondered if you might talk, I mentioned a little bit about the sound of your diction. And Jason, for you, particularly for me, what stood out was your images. They're so strong. When you described the woman's lips as a smile of leeches in a perfect circle, or you're describing mold, and I think you said flowers in the dark, a damp room on the 3rd floor. I mean, just beautiful, beautiful images. And so I was curious for our craft nerds in the audience, when you're writing a poem, what comes first for you? Do you see images? Do you hear language? What is your process of accessing meaning when you're writing a poem?
You're asking me specifically,
I'm
or?
asking both of you.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I need to work my way into this. I don't know, for some reason, I don't know if you have that experience as a poet yourself. I find it challenging to answer craft questions sometimes, but yeah, I'm going to give it my best shot. What comes first? Gosh, I had never thought about it. I think I've said this in an interview before. The first place for me of poetry is the body. Like, I feel it first in my body. I feel it as a thing, as a shape. I don't know how you feel a shape in your body, but that's the first place for me. And then the task is to give it language. I mean, I can't be more original. I mean, I can't be, yeah, I mean, the task is to kind of shape it into an image. And I do believe that the image is the sine qua non of poetry. The image is the thing of poetry. And I think that the image for any given poet comes out of that poet's unique chemistry of place and identity. And so I guess if I'm talking to my students, I would say lean into that weird part of you, or not, it's probably not weird, but lean into that you-ness of you, that strange thing that is only you, that strange way of seeing that only you, that is only you. Lean into the specificity of, that chemistry, if that makes sense. So yes, smile of leeches in a perfect circle. I mean, that's the, yeah.
I have completely forgotten what the question was, because it was imagery.
Well, I was saying for you, my ear was hearing a lot of the sounds, the clash of sounds, and with Jason, my experience of a reader was a lot of the imagery. Both of you obviously do both very well, but I was curious if that's what you're led by, if that's your engine to access a poem is through sound and is through this wordplay, or if you're led by the image or by a narrative or some such thing. Yeah.
I think I'm really led from just like an overspilling of when I don't know what else to do. It's like my last resort. But in terms of like images and things like that, and sound especially, I think I was really scared about sound in poetry because we keep hearing about the meter, and like, I am so confused about the meter and unstressed and stressed syllables. And like when I first started, I was writing these poems, like counting syllables, counting like, oh, is this unstressed? Is this stressed? And like, I got really, really just confused. Just like, so I just really go by intuition. What sounds right to me? What sounds right to my ear? And I have one poem in the collection where I'm deliberately trying to write the poem to the beat of a Damian Marley song, which is called Listen, because I think sometimes I have a problem with listening, maybe, I don't know. But I was really trying hard to listen to the rhythm. I think I just got paranoid about rhythm, thinking that I hadn't got a poetic rhythm, and it was because I was so convinced that a poetic rhythm was this iambic pentameter rhythm that I just couldn't understand it.
Yeah, I think sound for Caribbean writers, I mean, this is yeah, sound. This is nothing new to the audience that's here. Sound for Caribbean poets is primordial, and the question is why that is. I think there are many answers. Well, one of them, I think, is the joy that we get out of playing with sound. There's a kind of joy that comes with that. It's a deeply embodied thing. You know, obviously, many Caribbean writers talk about this. Brathwaite, you know, but even novelists like Erna Brodba, and you know, it's I think, and so for me, like when I write, the sound is quintessential. Yeah. I can't do poetry that doesn't sound good to the ear. I think it's trying to get your attention back. Yeah, but anyway, I'm just saying I can't do poetry that doesn't sound, because I think sound is not just a like a side thing. It is essential to how we see ourselves, to our sense of community. I mean, when you know, just think about you know, us who live abroad and, you know, in diasporas, and when we hear that sound, you know, and I think this is universal. The sound is something that connects a community, but also I think the sound is the landscape. Our sound is our landscape as well. Brathwaite, I mean, really puts that finely in his work in terms of talking about, you know, tidal-ectics and the hurricane and all of that. But so I think that's some of my thoughts on that.
I think I have time for one last question. I have so many, but I know we got started a little late. I wanted to ask you all both about how your work is grappling with the aftermath of loss. For you, Celia, really thinking about the devastation of the hurricane on Dominica, really forcing a family to sort through what is left behind. The poem, particularly about you and your sister picking fruit off of the still giving mango tree, really, really stuck with me. And Jason, thinking about the narratives and the experiences of the leavers, you know, who leave behind a place, who leave behind a family, who have to situate themselves in a space of trying to find belonging, and the kind of isolation and a kind of grief that stays with you in those places. I wondered if you could talk with us about how you wrote through these different kinds of approaches of grief, of writing through grief, and doing so with such a tenderness, and this fierce commitment, right, to not look away, to stay with the thing, to stay with the thing.
Yeah. Oh, big question. Big question. I return to joy. Yeah. I think joy is really important. Joy is important to me in this book. I mean, if you look at the cover, you get an indication of what I'm trying to do. In terms of, I think, there's this Driftpile Cree poet called Billy Ray Belcour. He has this phrase called the conspiracy of joy. This conspiracy of joy. In other words, faced with the hardness that we have to deal with in terms of loss and displacement and grief and all of that, you know, how do we still manage to keep that kind of twistiness of that kind of playfulness with language and with humor and with wordplay and with riding the rhythm and those things. I think it's a vital way in which we find ourselves in the world, to kind of, you know, I'm trying to bring these ideas together. I think there's something about joy in the deliberate act of cultivating joy, or probably it's not even intentional, it's probably just a part of who we are. So, I think it was important to me in writing about these difficult topics to find an aesthetic of the word play and that, that kind of orality that, and that sort of form of the body moving through space, dancing, I've written about choreography in my work, in my scholarly work, in thinking about how in the presence of insecurity, if you just look at our cities, you go out into the street, and you just observe people move. You observe the loaders loading the truck. You're in Port-au-Prince, and you observe this never-ending choreography of bodies, just people just feeling each other and feeling themselves. I think that's part of what I'm trying to do in my work as well, through sound and rhythm, and that playfulness of resonances. So yeah, that was my approach to that was my approach to the work, in a nutshell.
Yeah. For me, like I say, one of the reasons I came to write the collection was that it was a really confusing time. People think of the hurricane and they think it's just all trauma, but there was some real touching, love-filled, joyous moments. I mean, we laughed so much with the little that we had. There was so much love. And something like that really, when every grounding that you had, when that's taken away from you, you really find out what you have and what you are. And I love Samantha yesterday mentioned about talking about the oneness of everything, and Linton today talking about how he was trying to grapple with the different modes of spirituality and trying to find out which mode works for you. We all were tested as to what we believed in and what we could cling onto, and there was very little material things that we could cling onto. We could cling onto each other, and we could cling onto the fact that that mango tree was standing there and it was giving us mangoes. And to me, that just symbolized, that was the greatest metaphor for just everything, yeah.
Beautiful. I'll turn it over for some questions. Yes, we have a question here.
Thank you. I have two separate questions for the authors. First, for Jason. On the day that you revealed your book cover, so this is something that happened on Twitter, and I never told you about this because I was waiting for this moment to talk to you, right? But so your cover is fantastic, it's beautiful. A woman, she wrote, she was a European woman, she wrote, juicy. And I asked her a question, and I said, are you talking about the juiciness and the deliciousness of Jason's writing, or are you talking about the man on the cover? And she said she was talking about the man on the cover. I proceeded to write her an essay. She blocked and deleted me, but okay. So
all of that.
So the thing is, so immediately there was this, and it was a really fantastic moment, because Othello, the character in your book, is beholden onto her before even reading, and then it reminded me of the importance of this work when talking about fetishization of black masculinity and this man in a world with, around, the world that Othello is in. Yeah. So I want to ask, with that in mind, how were you able to ensure that Othello was still allowed to, or the character in the book is still allowed to engage in all of these experiences as a man, but also dealing with the fetishization of him in that world and I guess in the world in general?
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I mean, I can probably answer with one question, like the poem "Self-Portrait as My Body Self-Portrait as My Body on an Operating Table." That's exactly dealing with that. It begins, the oversized penis juts out into a pool of guffaws. I laugh embarrassed at myself. You know, yeah, it's those layers that we're grappling with in the work as well, you know, exactly that. So, I mean, you know, the Shakespeare play is already there, you know, so, yeah.
Cool. Thank you. And then for Celia, you said you love AI. So I've thought of an AI question for you. There's a program right now that's been invented which is the producers are trying to ensure that their goal is to create a program that can replicate poets and write poetry before the poets do.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard about it. And
Yeah.
I want to ask you how you feel about the idea of, because you talk about play, and I think there's
Yeah.
something so wonderful about that. How do you feel about
Yeah.
poetry being replicated before you
Yeah.
can even...
Let me just clarify when I say I love AI. I love discussing about AI because AI doesn't exist as an entity. AI is computer code. There's no such entity as an AI. It's people writing computer code. And what worries me about this whole debate is A, who's writing the computer code, and B, a lot of it is based on feedback. I mean, the farmers, the wise people who work the land, all the wise old people, they are not feeding into these algorithms. They're not on Facebook, they're not on Twitter. So these algorithms are being fed by a very small subset of the population. So, and just on a separate note, I think poetry is the thing that will make AI conscious.
I think we have time for one last question.
I think just to follow up on that, and I actually think it connects to this question around the issue of AI and its difference from the bodily experience. I think that program can never happen. It will never happen, because how do you teach a computer or program the human experience, right? My colleague just published a piece in the Washington Post that poetry would be the foil to AI. It's a fabulous piece because he says, you know, AI can't capture the call of his mother's voice when she calls him faroti downstairs, right? The taste of her curry and the taste of her spices. And even, you know, Jason getting up to read his poetry. How does AI capture the movement? I thought it was important that you stood up to present, right? Because if so much of your music is about, poetry is about sound, right? That there's certain elements of the human experience that can't be reproduced, in spite of the way that we, so many things try to strip Black bodies of their humanity, right? And I think AI is another extension of that, quite frankly. That the human experience is that thing within poetry that keeps, the aesthetic, the motion, the play alive.
But also on that point, we underestimate the reader. The poetry is a two-way experience, and I can read an AI poem and get what I need from it. I can read a box of cereal and get what I need from it. The universe is speaking to us every single minute. I read people's T-shirts, they tell me what I need. I read the bus things on our buses all have labels. The universe is speaking to us all the time, so we just need to observe it. So I'm afraid we don't necessarily need poets. There's poetry all over. So yeah, read an AI poem. You might just discover something. It's fine.
Thank you. I think that's a good way to end. Let's give us a hand to our poet. And afterward, in this room, there will be at 3:30 a panel with our climate change experts. So join us here. And in the back, there's some freebies of Furious Flower poetry materials. So I encourage you to take some of our stickers and programming information. Thank you. Oh, I didn't know which way you were going.